Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Draft Room. This is the NFL Draft Podcast of the Packernet Podcast Network. If you'd like to call in, if you'd like to, drop a mock, give your thoughts, whatever, 608-561-3243. So the Combine kicked off yesterday. Again, not the running, jumping portion of it, but as I said, anytime you get a group of people together in one place, like Indianapolis, you're going to start to get an explosion of news and rumors and all that stuff because you got media people talking to scouts and to GMs and to coaches and all that good stuff. So today I just want to get caught up on some of the news. Again, if you listen to the Packernet podcast this morning, some of this will be duplicated, but it's going to be much more in-depth. I skipped couple things because, it's not all. I don't want to spend the entire Packernet show talking about prospects we can't even get. But I'm going to just kind of start ripping through some of this stuff in no particular order. And again, rather than looking at it from a Packer standpoint, it's obviously going to be more of a NFL draft standpoint. So, first of all, and we all kind of knew this was going to happen. In fact, we've been speculating he's going to go to Minnesota for a while now, but Falcons GM Ian Cunningham confirmed that Kirk Cousins will be released in March on the first day of the new league year, making him a free agent. Now, when if you remember yesterday when we did the mock draft, the Atlanta Falcons do not have a first-round pick. We were doing third round, and so the second-round pick from the person that did it had them taking Trinidad Chambliss. Now, obviously, Michael Penix is still the quarterback there. But in terms of could they possibly go in a direction, let's even remember they don't have a first round pick, so there's no major investment they could make, which also could be seen as a major signal that we want to move on from Penix. But I do think they're kind of in an interesting situation here because if you look at the quarterback situation the way that it's laid out, I would have to assume it's a very unique year because you have so many different guys. I've talked about Club Nick. Club Nick, by the way, has dropped to 219 out of Clemson. He is flirting with going undrafted if this holds up. But you've also got Carson Beck, Drew Allar, Garrett Nussmeier. These are guys that at one point or another, they were talked about as could be first overall picks or first round for sure, early first round. And now they're all, third round, fourth round. Probably fourth or late fourth or fifth round, with the exception of Klubnik, who's, again, seventh round at this point. Then you've also got, toolsy guys like Cole Payton at 132, Talon Green at 170. The point is there's a lot of really high upside prospects that, again, have shown incredible ability, and for whatever reason just are not maintaining that level. If you're the Falcons or really any other team, again, the Packers even looking for backups or whatever, but there's an interesting opportunity, I think, to draft a clear backup. You're signaling fourth round pick, backup quarterback, Carson Beck, whatever. It's not a big deal. You don't need to worry Penix. At the same time, we've got 2 years of Penix. Year one actually looked really good, but he hardly played. Year two looked bad, and he got hurt, which both of those are two different independent facts that are both not good. So we're going into year three. We need to see something from Penix a little bit, and if we don't, we're already in oh-shoot territory. If we get a guy, let's say it's Cole Payton. If we get a guy like that, he's already got a year under his belt now. So he's got a year under his belt. Penix isn't looking great. Maybe year four is kind of that final year, and it could potentially even be a competition if Payton starts to look good against Penix. I just think it's kind of an interesting quarterback year because there's so many guys that are uniquely talented that are not in any way talked about as even second-round picks. Nussmeier is a third-round pick. Allar, Beck, and I think Peyton are like 4th-round picks. And we'll see what happens at the Combine. We'll see if anybody maybe jumps up like Nussmeier into a 2nd-round conversation. I mean, at this point, Ty Simpson is going to fall out of the 1st round. He's all the way down to 31 now. Quarterbacks are just plummeting here. There's no upward movement. Again, Club Nick down to 219 is insane. And Ty Simpson is at 31. He's about to fall out of the 1st round here. So it is a terrible year if you need a starting quarterback. If you're a team that's kind of either looking for a quality backup or maybe is flirting, you could even say the Steelers, this is kind of an awesome year. Now, you're going to have to get lucky because I'm guessing, if anybody thought that there was a good chance that these guys were going to pop off, they would be higher picks. But the point is, between this group, you have to assume somebody's going to be pretty solid. Somebody's going to show something. And honestly, even if, and maybe this is where these guys are going to end up going early, because the fact of the matter is you've only got the one quarterback. You have a lot of other quarterback needy teams immediately. So even leaving aside the teams that don't really want to invest high or whatever, you've got teams like the Jets, you got a bunch of other teams that need quarterbacks today that aren't going to get them. Unless the Jets, draft Ty Simpson or something at 16 or whatever. They do have a pick 33 if he makes it there, I guess. It might end up being an actual feeding frenzy. But either way, I think there's a lot of opportunities for a lot of teams to find some fun projects. And again, I have to assume this group here, especially Nussmeier, Allar, Beck, Peyton. Peyton is kind of for different reasons. But I really like him. He fits the mold of what a lot of teams like with that athleticism, and I think his passing is actually really crisp. Taylon Green is kind of fun too, but some of his, as I've said before, when you watch his passes, some of them are good, but there's way too many like, what the heck was that kind of moments. Cole Payton is one of those guys where the ball, it looks like a video game where it magnetizes right to their hands. The ball placement is beautiful. So, I mean, I've said before, I'm somewhat confused as to why some of these guys are not higher, but whatever. We'll see how it goes, I guess. I'm not a scout. I don't pretend to be. I just I like the quarterbacks in this class. Makes it easier to like them when they're not, 1st round. But when they're supposedly top 10, you hold them to such a high standard. That's why I didn't really like Ty Simpson. Because he was sitting at like 15, 16, and I'm expecting way more than what I saw. If you told me Ty Simpson was at 200, I'd have been like, what the heck? This guy's freaking awesome. What do you want? Anywho, in other news, in regards to A.J. Green, which has been a question, obviously, with the mock drafts and whatnot, Eagles head coach Nick Sirianni on if A.J. Brown will be on the team in 2026. He said, will AJ be here next season? I think there's still a spot where I can't guarantee how anything is going to play out into next season. I'm thinking I'm going to be the coach next season, but you can't guarantee anything past tomorrow. That's such a... it's one of those terrible attempts at trying not to answer a question when you're basically answering the question. It's not looking good for AJ Green, so keep sending wide receivers to the Eagles in your mocks. Via Dane Brugler, Arizona State wide receiver Jordan Tyson won't be doing any on-field workouts or testing at the NFL Combine. He continues to work his way back from in-season hamstring injury. I saw a bunch of people that are really mad at him. Even in the comments section, guy is not helping his draft stock. He just said he's working his way back from an injury. A lot of people very angry that he is choosing not to participate in this. Look, first of all, and I know a lot of the comments also are he's had a lot of injury issues or whatever, so it's a continued problem. I'll be honest, I have no idea how this would necessarily hurt his draft stock. I think everybody's massively overreacting. First of all, a lot of guys that are early picks are skipping this stuff. They have been for years. That's becoming a bigger trend. In fact, it's one of the things the NFL is kind of upset about, especially since they changed the schedule around to make it more appealing for viewers or whatever, which I don't even know how they think they did that. But they try to make it more of an event. And so you've got these events spread out all over the place. So these guys will do something early in the morning, and then they got to wait until late at night, 10 o'clock at night. They're supposed to run a 40. Well, they're going to tear their frickin' ACL doing this stuff because their bodies are all getting cold and tight. And a lot of the, what are you going to fall from 5 to 7? I mean, give me a break. I'm not talking about Tyson necessarily, but a lot of these guys, what's the point? Why would I risk hurting myself? I know I'm getting drafted early. And as far as, is this going to hurt Jordan Tyson's situation? First of all, they know that he has soft tissue issues. So any problem with that situation was already baked into the cake. He had an in-season hamstring injury, which means they knew that he hurt his hamstring in the season and that it was one of several. The fact that he's not participating because of that injury they already knew about, how in the world is that going to... Some people are talking about it's going to drop him out of the top 30 or something. Like, what are you talking about? Everybody's being so dramatic because somebody doesn't want to do, they don't want to run the 40 and everyone's mad about it. I demand my 40 times. So, I think there are questions. I think the question of could he fall is there, but I don't think it's because of this. If he falls, it'll be because of what everybody in the comments is talking about. Like, they just don't trust the medicals. And then final note before the first break here. The Chicago Bears are in talks with the league office right now regarding receiving a third-round compensatory pick for Ian Cunningham, hiring as GM in Atlanta. The Bears are a pathetic organization, and I laugh at their failure. Can't help it. All right, let's take a break. We'll be right back. There's a note here about Ty Simpson. Apparently, he weighed in the 190s ahead of the Rose Bowl due to a severe case of gastritis he dealt with late in the season. But he's back up to 215 pounds as he heads to Indianapolis for the NFL Combine. We'll see what comes of that. First of all, let's actually see what he weighs in at. Flipping over to Walter Football, looking at some of the rumors that they've pulled together here. First of all, and I mentioned this on this morning's program, but the Lions have been sniffing around free agent tackles via Daniel Jeremiah. The reason why, I know this isn't a free agency draft podcast, but whatever they're looking for in free agency signals what they're looking for in the draft. The bottom line is they're looking. We still got to see what's going on with Taylor Decker. Not sure how much more time he has here in Detroit. Either way, they're going to need a replacement for him. There's also talk about the potential trade in Miami for away with Jalen Waddle. I've seen rumblings about this. Miami obviously is getting rid of a lot of people. It would be a little surprising to just get rid of absolutely everybody. Obviously, in the mocks and whatnot, we've looked at wide receiver for Miami. That would make it a much more desperate situation if Waddle also leaves. But apparently, Mark Caboli on the Pat McAfee show said that the Steelers may trade for Jalen Waddle. Steelers also a team looking to add more weapons for presumably Aaron Rodgers. I don't know. Travis Etienne has legitimate interest in signing with the Kansas City Chiefs. The Chargers may be looking to add Tyler Linderbaum in free agency. Now, a couple things on that. Number one, as we talked about yesterday on the show, the Chargers' interior offensive line is appalling. They just lost their center, which doesn't necessarily hurt at all other than the depth situation, but it's just a terrible situation. So they're going to be going very hard in free agency, probably in part because you can't assume you're going to fix an entire interior offensive line in the draft. Even if you draft 3 interior guys, the odds that they're all going to come in and all be starters and all be high-quality starters is very low. You're probably looking to do more of what the Chicago Bears did and bring in a bunch of people, and then we'll see what we can do in the draft. Now, I also saw that Linderbaum, the Baltimore Ravens, are looking to offer him a market resetting contract to stay in Baltimore. Presumably, he will stay in Baltimore. He may not, but if the Baltimore Ravens have already come out and said, we're going to give you, $18 million or whatever as a center and, top money, then I don't know what else you're looking for unless you genuinely think you're going to get a bunch more money somewhere else. The Cardinals are potential suitors for Breece Hall via Rich Cimini. Again, really just signaling what teams are looking for. Stephen Jones of the Dallas Cowboys told the media that he's open to trading one of the Cowboys' 2 first-round picks. Dolphins favor signing Malik Willis. That's via Tony Pauline. Obviously, that's an important note. We got to figure out what to do with them and their quarterback situation. That's been kind of speculated for a long time, but we got to see what happens. I know they're currently working through the Tua thing, and it sounds like the reason the deal hasn't been done is because they're trying to trade him. So they're working on seeing if they can get any compensation for Tua before they let him walk out the door is basically what's happening there. The Colts, via Tom Pelissero, are apparently looking to discuss a long-term deal with Daniel Jones. Jones was playing pretty well. He ended up having a torn Achilles and whatnot. But you got a pretty good team going. I don't know if you really want to mess that up. Ryan Poles is at the podium right now. He says, at the end of the day, you should want to develop your staff regardless of the color of their skin. He says that the NFL's rule awarding a third-round pick if a minority coach or executive leaves to become a GM or head coach is a strange rule. It is, and they're also fighting to get that third-round pick, which I guess is fine. I mean, it's just a stupid rule, but I mean, if it's a rule, I want my pick. Jonathan Jones, there's a lot going on right now. I'm kind of just live reading some of this. Jonathan Jones says the Dolphins would love for someone to give them draft compensation and take part of Tua's contract. That's an extremely unlikely scenario. Releasing Tua with a post-June 1 designation is the option nearly everyone in the league is anticipating. A couple different notes from Tony Pauline over at Essentially Sports. I said it before, but it cracks me up how these small companies will just pop up out of nowhere. And essentially their plan is, Essentially Sports, their plan is, let's start a website and then take all this money and throw it at big personalities and have them come here, and that'll give us some credibility. The problem is these guys get hired away every year or two. So, and then nobody will ever come back to your website again. But whatever. Essentially Sports now houses Tony Pauline. NFLPA identifies teams that need to spend money. The NFLPA told members and agents that they expect the salary cap to be $303.5 million, though it could reach as high as $305 million. Several teams, including the New York Jets, New Orleans Saints, Seattle Seahawks, Las Vegas Raiders, Los Angeles Rams, and Chargers, as well as Tennessee Titans, must spend an additional $50 million on player contracts this year to meet their 3-year requirement, according to the CBA. Already talked about the Chargers looking to take big swings at some other guys. There's quite a few teams here, and this might just be, signing contracts of your own free agents in-house, but this also could signal some teams that are looking to spend in free agency as well. It's the interesting thing about this. We do all our mock drafts, and we have an idea of, okay, they're going to draft this guy, this guy, this guy. And then one free agent signing later, it just throws everything into chaos. Well, frickin' never mind. I guess they don't need that anymore. So now what do we do? Especially with those first round mocks, everybody thinks they got it so dialed in. Oh yeah, this is it. This is the first. And then somebody in the top 10 goes out and gets that need that you thought that they were going to be drafting. They don't need it anymore. Then they take their next biggest need, and that starts a chain reaction all the way down the draft that changes everything. Also talks about the Tua situation. We kind of know a lot of this, including the Malik report that we just talked about. But essentially saying that the Tua decision will be happening very soon. He says it could publicly be announced before the end of the combine. No one expects Tua to be back with the franchise, obviously. And then he says the overwhelming belief from people I've spoken with is that the Dolphins head coach Jeff Hafley favors signing Malik Willis, the former Packers backup, who's slated for free agency, who, by the way, right now is, by many people's accounts, the top free agent available. So, I mean, that's going to probably be a pretty big signing. It goes on to say many question whether Miami will have enough money to sign Willis in free agency. People I've spoken with believe Willis ends up with the Arizona Cardinals, as they are expected to cut ties with Kyler Murray. If they can't sign Malik, what will the Dolphins do? And that, again, brings us back to that question of quarterbacks in the draft. Dolphins are in for seemingly a pretty big overhaul here, and it seems like they're embracing it, which is good. A lot of teams don't seem to want to do that. They want to try to string it along, and how can we try to make this thing work? They're going in with a big old stick of dynamite, blowing this thing wide open and saying, let's rebuild it, which also signals, a couple things with Miami. Whenever you're doing a full teardown and rebuild, always look for them, and if they can get a quarterback, fine, look for them to build in the trenches. Trying to get an idea of what Miami's going to do, I would expect them very much to be focused on building in the trenches. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was John Eric Sullivan made some comments in regard to that specifically, about the importance of building with the big guys up front. He also made comments about being a team that can win in cold weather, and that, he alluded to size being a component of that somehow. I don't know. Big don't get small, I think was his comment. Fast gets slow, but big don't get small, I think. There is also the question of Quinn Ewers, another very weird situation. You talk about a guy that was seen as this, lock number one pick or first round pick, fell to the 7th round and really did not impress in the little bit of time that he played. Not that it's a fair thing to do when a guy comes in, plays week 7 and then 16, 17, 18. But 622 yards, 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 39.7 grade, 40.5 passing grade. That said, Bobby Slowick, who is elevated from pass game coordinator to offensive coordinator, is a big fan of Quinn Ewers. A source tells me the likely plan includes using Ewers as the starter in 2026 and signing an inexpensive backup such as Jimmy Garoppolo. People close to the situation believe that Ewers deserves an opportunity to prove he can lead a franchise in the NFL. The former Longhorn signal caller was a day 2 prospect who mind-blowingly fell to the final round of last year's draft. If Ewers doesn't work out, then Hafley and the organization can select the signal caller of the future during the 2027 NFL draft, which I think makes probably the most sense. You're not getting your guy this year. Build up through the trenches. Lay your foundation. Get a couple guards that this Jonah Savanaia. I know he's a 2nd round pick, so we'll see what he can do. But he had a terrible. Man, they've got so many early picks. The funniest thing here, they have exclusively 1st and 2nd round picks on their offensive line, except for one guy. The only guy that had a good year and seems to be a good player is the UDFA Aaron Brewer at center. They have 2nd round pick Patrick Paul, who had a 66 grade. 2nd round pick Jonah Savanaia, who had a 28 grade. Cole Strange is a former 1st round pick, had a 54 grade. And then former 1st round pick Austin Jackson with a 65 grade. Maybe they should stop drafting offensive linemen. But the offensive line, defensive line needs overhaul from top to bottom. So I think as you look at the Miami Dolphins, it makes sense that is where the investment lies. They have 3 third-round picks. So they're in a decent position here. Obviously, the defensive tackles are a bunch of just 330-pound guys that can't pass rush, which isn't going to go over very well for anybody. But there should be plenty of opportunities to grab a couple edge rushers as well as some offensive linemen, whether that be tackle or interior, to build some things out, including, in addition, grab cornerbacks, wide receivers, tight end. And then again, next year, 2027, presumably if Quinn Ewers is as bad this year as he was last year, you're going to have a top 10 pick for sure, probably a top 5 pick, depending how good of a defense Hafley can put together for this, new unit that you're going to assemble. Go ahead and get your quarterback then. All right, let's take our final break. We got some more news and notes to get to. Also via Tony Pauline, the conversation over pass rushers expected to be available once the league year starts has completely focused on Max Crosby of the Raiders. Yet another talented veteran is expected to hit the market, Trey Hendrickson, and there's little talk of where he'll end up. That's because the Cincinnati Bengals have been mum on their plans. So we've been over this, this is 2 years running now with Max Crosby and with Trey Hendrickson, which is why I said, if you're drafting for the Raiders or if you're drafting for the Bengals, especially the Bengals. I think that's kind of a done deal with him leaving. He's not coming back. You have to take edge very strongly into consideration. I mean, the Bengals are in such a bad spot. The linebackers are a disaster. Safeties are not good. The defensive line across the board is just not good enough, especially if you remove Trey Hendrickson from the equation. It is rough. They got TJ Slayton on the line right now, so, obviously they're interested in a 6'5", 330 guy, so you can grab one of them at some point. But you've got to get some pass rushers over on that team. The Raiders as well. Again, they're sounding like they want to try to keep them. There's a lot of talk about that, and again, it happened last year. Maybe it'll happen again about we want to smooth things over. We want things to be better, all that kind of stuff. I still think he's going to be 29 years old this year. He hasn't been elite since 2023. His 3 elite years were 2021 through 2023. His grades were 92, 90, 92. The last 2 years, it's been 74, 79. He's still good, but he's not that top 5 pass rusher guy. At least he hasn't been, and I doubt at 30, that's when suddenly he's going to pop off. So whether he stays or whether he goes, it's if he leaves, it's desperate. We need defensive line help. The pass rushers outside of Crosby are non-existent, and our defensive tackles are not good. But even if he stays, how much longer is he going to stay? He's 29 years old, and he's trying to leave every year. In addition, Crosby has been declining. Still very good, but this is not he stayed, never mind, we don't need to worry about it. Yes, you do need to worry about it. Very much so you need to worry about it. And unfortunately for you, fortunately and unfortunately, you have the first pick, which means you're getting a quarterback, which means you will not be getting an edge rusher in the first round. So you're looking at pick 36 as your best option to get somebody. So, I don't know if you're looking at a guy like Zion Young, R. Mason Thomas. There's not a massive amount of options. Mesidor, I don't think, makes it. TJ Parker probably doesn't make it. And that's assuming that these are your favorite options at that point. I mean, Lee Hunter's sitting there at defensive tackle. Not to mention, there's just so many needs here. I guess there's no reason to reach for an edge, but if there ever was a team that needed absolutely everything, they need a quarterback, they need offensive line, they need desperately wide receiver, they need corner, defensive tackle, edge, linebacker, and safety. I think the only things they don't need are running back and tight end, with Genty and Bowers there. Which, by the way, I can't think of a worse. You talk about building a team from the inside out, build in the trenches and build outward. I can't think of a worse and dumber strategy than starting with your tight end and running back. What do you do after that? You add like a linebacker and a safety. Then we'll add a guard and a center. Then we'll add a DT and wide receiver. Then we'll get a tackle and pass rusher, and then we'll get a quarterback. I think in that order is the best way to build a team. We got a report here. USC wide receiver Mekhi Lemon will participate in position drills at the Combine. So that's good. A little bit more from Tony Pauline. Another article posted the 24th. Mendoza is a special prospect. It's kind of funny because I always kind of get annoyed with NFL draft coverage because it's so first-round focused, especially top 10 focused. It's just the same prospects over and over and over again. But it also is kind of funny because you can go too far the other direction, especially once somebody gets locked in. I feel like Mendoza just doesn't get talked about anymore because nobody cares. Everybody knows he's going to go first. No point talking about it anymore. He says the narrative since the 2025 season began is that the quarterback Fernando Mendoza is a solid prospect, but nothing special. He's been accused of being a product of the system since he never had to carry the Indiana offense on his shoulders. Yet in recent conversations, I found many teams feel differently about the consensus first pick in the draft. Many have told me outright that Mendoza is a special quarterback that they would love to have on their roster. One source told me there's nothing he can't do, pointing to his combination of size, arm talent, and football acumen. Though no one said that the Indiana offense held back Mendoza, most were quick to point out that the quarterback did what was asked of him this past season and came through when the Hoosiers needed him most. Almost all believe that the physical skills and football ability to be a franchise quarterback are there. Teams I've spoken to also love the personality they've seen in the national spotlight, as well as the character background checks. While some have claimed Mendoza is goofy, next-level decision-makers believe he's a great leader on and off the field who will be the guy on Sundays. You know, it's kind of funny because we talked about this a little bit with Cam Ward. Cam Ward was kind of known to be that first pick, and it wasn't really discussed much anymore. And it got to be the point where he got drafted, and everybody was like, this is the least talked about, least hyped prospect ever. It went on to be warranted because Cam Ward was absolutely freaking terrible, is terrible, seems to be, pending some kind of massive breakout. But I feel like we could end up in a similar territory with Fernando Mendoza because, in part, he's not a Caleb Williams. He's not a massively hyped guy. He doesn't have these elite traits. He's not, okay, to be clear, I shouldn't say he doesn't have elite traits. He doesn't have the fun highlight traits. He doesn't have Lamar's legs. He doesn't have, Caleb's arm. He doesn't have the ability to kind of throw frickin' both feet off the ground, body twisted in the wrong direction, 40 yards down the field type stuff. He's just a normal good quarterback. And so whether he's good or bad, I just don't think anybody's going to care. I kind of have that feeling that it's, once the draft happens and we move on, there's going to be some talk about some of these prospects and we'll see how it goes. But, usually when there is a, super talented first round, there's a lot of talk. I just don't know that there's going to be, especially since it's the Raiders. Are people going to be talking about, watch out for Mendoza and the Raiders? Nobody's going to talk about that. Nobody wants to talk about the Raiders. And I don't think anyone's going to want to talk about Fernando Mendoza. The only way that they put themselves out there is for Mendoza to come in and start playing well. Whether or not the Raiders are going to be able to put him in a position to succeed will be a different question. But, I think at the very least, you draft him. And, again, I just got done saying edge, but, at this point, who cares if you have the 32nd ranked defense? I think you got to protect your quarterback. Let him sit in the pocket and operate with some guys. Go out in free agency, add some offensive linemen, get a wide receiver, trade for a receiver. I don't care what you got to do. This Tyler Lockett, Jack Besh thing and Trey Tucker, it ain't going to work. And I'm sure he can do some fun stuff with Gentee and Bowers, but offensive line, wide receiver. Because if you can, again, you're not going to be a Super Bowl contender this year. Who cares if you have another top 10 pick next year? I don't care. Obviously, as a Raiders fan, you want to win games, you want to watch fun things, and you will. Look, if I'm the Raiders, my goal coming into this season is, goal is maybe the wrong word, but the way I'm viewing this, number one offense, 32nd ranked defense. Crosby's not going to be a part of your future, so don't go tying up all your money in Max Crosby. Just don't do it. Now, I guess it's not going to hurt you that bad because it's probably going to be a 1 to 2 year thing, but you could spend that money elsewhere. Take that money, invest in a lesser, way less expensive edge rusher to replace him, then go out and get some offensive lineman, wide receiver, draft offensive lineman, wide receiver, and a couple other token spots, but I couldn't give a crap about the playoffs, about any of that stuff. I want this offense to be elite with Fernando Mendoza. That's it. That's the only goal. 32nd ranked defense and special teams. I don't care. What do I have to do to get the number one offense in football? We'll deal with the rest later. Goes on to talk about the Jets and their quarterback situation. Says after last year's failure at quarterback, the Jets are once again in the market for a starting signal caller to compete or replace with Justin Fields. That's where that, the interesting thing with that second pick, do they take Ty Simpson, who is now falling closer to the second round? But, the easy thing for a person doing a mock draft to do is to look at it and say, just get him in the second round. I don't think he makes it there. You might have to trade up into the first round again to have a third pick if you want to guarantee that you get him. And that only assumes that he makes it to, like 28, 29, 30. What if you don't know what's going to happen? Somebody could take him at freaking 22, and you're sitting there thinking, well, that was stupid. Why do we let him go? So you still have to consider it. That being said, if I'm the Jets, I'm tired of repeated failure over and over and over again, and taking an early swing at a mediocre falling quarterback because he's the best available. I hate to be unfair to Ty Simpson, but, we've taken swing after swing after swing at significantly better prospects than Ty Simpson. He may end up being a great quarterback, I don't know, but significantly better prospects than Ty Simpson and have failed. Similar to the Raiders, I'm probably looking at a different direction and hoping next year we get a quarterback. But much of the narrative outside of the league has centered around the team potentially making a trade for Kyler Murray, yet people in the league don't do that. People in the league tell me if the general manager gets his way, the Jets will look to bring in a less expensive signal caller. The two names that keep entering the conversation, Tanner McKee and Davis Mills. Whew. Well, it's a good way to tank, I'll tell you that. I would hate to be a Jets fan, which is an evergreen comment. Both are Stanford graduates who backed up big-name quarterbacks, both in the final year of their contracts. This means that the Jets would have to swing a trade. Oh, jeez. Yeah. I mean, you're still... I mean, do you bother even drafting somebody at that point? I mean, if we're clearly tanking for a quarterback next year, why? Just freaking who cares? Just leave it alone. And then looking at Alec Pierce, as reported during the Senior Bowl, receiver Alec Pierce is poised to be a top free agent if he and the Colts don't agree on a new deal before the market opens. Even back then, sources told me they expect Pierce would hit the open market, and that seems to be the case. League insiders who forecast the free agent market tell me that Pierce and George Pickens, the top two free agent receivers, are expected to sign contracts that average at least $27 million annually. Wow. You may remember that at the Senior Bowl article I referenced, I mentioned the Cowboys would put the franchise tag on Pickens if they can't sign him to a long-term deal before the opening of free agency. Other outlets have since confirmed that story. I'm told that the two receiver-needy teams, the Las Vegas Raiders and Tennessee Titans, there you go, Raiders, will be major suitors for Pierce. If the Titans can't sign Pierce, their next target is Wan'Dale Robinson. Tennessee had interest in Robinson even before hiring Brian Daboll as its offensive coordinator. Daboll drafted Robinson out of Kentucky in 2022 when he was the head coach of the New York Giants. Tennessee's interest in Robinson has risen even further since the hiring of Daboll. The New York Giants are expected to make a pitch to keep their 2022 second-round choice, as he is reminiscent of Zay Flowers, a receiver with whom new head coach John Harbaugh had success in Baltimore. Robinson is expected to fetch a contract that will earn him $15 million annually. So, some interesting nuggets to keep an eye on. Obviously, you have to just draft and assume these things aren't happening for now. But some fun things to play with here, different scenarios that you can look at as you're going through and doing your mock drafts if you're doing them. But with Brian Gutekunst about to take the podium here, I think I'm going to leave it at that. You all have a good rest of your day. I will talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.